The moment Destiny walked into the Lake Forest mansion, she knew the polite smiles were sharper than knives. This family wasn't welcoming a daughter. They were inspecting an outsider. Jonathan had warned her his family was difficult, but Destiny hadn't realized difficult was a polite word for cruel. The air in the grand foyer was stifling, smelling faintly of old furniture polish and roses. Ancestral portraits stared down from the heavy dark wood walls, their eyes seemingly as judgmental as the living woman standing before her. Victoria, Jonathan's mother, stood like a statue, her posture rigid. "So," she said, her voice thin, "you're Jonathan's friend." She emphasized the word, her eyes doing a slow, deliberate scan, from Destiny's conservative navy dress to her simple pearl earrings, looking her up and down like she was inspecting a piece of furniture she was thinking about returning. Jonathan, beside her, shifted nervously. "Mother, this is Destiny. My fiancé." "Of course," Victoria said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Dinner was a tense affair. The silence in the grand dining room was heavy, broken only by the sharp clinking of silverware that felt too heavy in Destiny's hands. Amanda, Jonathan's younger sister, stared at Destiny with an open, arrogant curiosity, as if she were an exotic creature her brother had brought home for show. "And what is it you do, dear?" Victoria asked, cutting into her veal. Destiny explained her background, her voice steady. She spoke of her upbringing in Southside Chicago and the consulting firm she had built from the ground up. She mentioned modestly that she'd just signed a $2 million contract. Victoria nodded politely, taking a sip of wine. "That's nice, dear. Small businesses are so important to the economy," she said, deliberately diminishing the success Destiny had fought for. They talked about people Destiny had never met, places she had never been. When Amanda mentioned their upcoming trip to the Hamptons, Destiny admitted politely that she'd never had the chance to visit. Amanda actually laughed. "Oh, you must go sometime," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Though I suppose it's not really your scene." The implication hung in the air. You don't belong. Throughout it all, Destiny maintained her dignity, smiling and nodding politely, even as she felt the tiny knives of their words. Jonathan remained mostly silent, caught in the crossfire. As they drove away in silence, Jonathan finally broke it with 2 words, "I'm sorry," confirming to Destiny that the evening wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration of war. If you're still watching and you felt that chill from Victoria and Amanda, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you're here with Destiny. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you join the Black King family and turn on that bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us at Black King continue creating great content that informs and inspires you. That declaration of war is just getting started. Now let's continue. The wedding was beautiful, but even the white veil couldn't blind Destiny to the cold shoulders of her new family. She felt like an actress playing a part she hadn't been cast for. The "I'm sorry" from that first meeting became Jonathan's refrain, a weak apology that followed Destiny through her first year of marriage as she was systematically excluded from family photos and forgotten on invitations to Sunday dinners. The hostility had been cemented at their wedding reception. Destiny, radiant in her gown, had been walking near the bar when she overheard Amanda talking to a cousin. "Well, at least she's pretty," Amanda said, her voice laced with disdain. "And I suppose Jonathan needed someone who could give him children, with some rhythm." Destiny felt the racist implication like a physical slap, but it was her wedding day, so she swallowed her anger and pretended she hadn't heard. That moment set the tone for a Cold War. Victoria would call Jonathan for family dinners, conveniently forgetting to mention that Destiny was invited. Amanda would post photos of family gatherings on social media, gatherings Destiny hadn't known were happening. They talked around her, through her, but never to her. It was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. Destiny tried to build a bridge, but she was growing weary. She began to doubt herself. Maybe I am being too sensitive? She wondered. These were successful, educated people. Who was she to question them? The deepest cut, however, came from Jonathan. When she finally confronted him about the exclusion, he became defensive. "That's just how they are, Destiny," he'd said, running a hand through his hair. "They're not usually like this. Maybe you're just being too sensitive." It felt like a betrayal. His refusal to stand up for her left her feeling completely and utterly alone. One Tuesday, Destiny brought forgotten documents to Jonathan's office, only to accidentally walk in on a frantic meeting with Victoria and Amanda. The moment Victoria saw her, she snapped, "Jonathan, perhaps we should continue this later," but not before Destiny spotted the terrifying blood-red numbers on the financial statements spread across the table. Destiny knew what financial ruin looked like. She had studied by candlelight when the power was out, and the panic she saw in Victoria's eyes was far more revealing than the fake pearls she'd worn to dinner. The irony was sharp. The family that had dismissed her small business as nice was now, ironically, facing a crisis that only her small business expertise could identify. Back in the sleek, modern quiet of her own consulting office, Destiny did what she did best. She analyzed. Using her professional skills, she did a quiet investigation into the family's holdings. The truth was worse than she imagined. The numbers she'd glimpsed weren't a temporary downturn. They were a death spiral. She confirmed the worst. The family business was 3 months away from bankruptcy due to bad investments and poor management. Meanwhile, the family's behavior only worsened as they tried to hide their shame. Victoria quietly stopped wearing her most expensive jewelry, and Amanda had moved back into the Lake Forest mansion, claiming she wanted to spend more time with Mother, not because she could no longer afford her downtown apartment. At a tense family dinner, Amanda, projecting her own insecurity, made a snide remark about new money people, aimed directly at Destiny, not understanding family legacy. Destiny found the irony almost funny. She was the only financially stable person at the table. Jonathan grew more stressed, working longer hours and refusing to discuss the financial trouble with her, further isolating her. Then, the invitation to the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala arrived on heavy, gold-lettered cardstock. "You don't have to go," Jonathan said, trying to protect her from another evening of humiliation. Destiny looked at him, tired of shrinking, tired of being protected. "I want to go," she said firmly. "I'm part of this family, whether they like it or not." She remembered her mother's words, "You belong wherever you choose to be." The next day, Destiny made a phone call to her lawyer. "I need you to set up a shell corporation," she said, her voice steady. "It should be called Phoenix Holdings." As Destiny fastened the clasp on her diamond necklace on the night of the gala, she knew her $50 million transfer was complete. The family was saved, but the war for her dignity was about to begin. Destiny just paid $50 million to save the very people who looked down on her, and now she's walking right into the lion's den. If you're still watching and you're ready to see this war for her dignity begin, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you join the Black King family and turn on that bell, because you do not want to miss what happens at this gala. Your support helps us at Black King continue creating amazing content that informs and inspires you. Now let's continue. The ballroom was magnificent, crystal chandeliers casting dancing shadows, but the glittering facade couldn't hide the ugliness Destiny felt as her new family glided through the crowd, masters of a world that treated her like a shadow. If Destiny had listened to Jonathan's well-meaning attempt to protect her by suggesting she stay home, she would have missed the performance of a lifetime. She straightened the seams of her stunning black dress, feeling powerful in her own right, no longer willing to shrink. She watched as Victoria and Amanda glided through the crowd, introducing Jonathan to important people but pointedly ignoring her. They were in their element, projecting an air of arrogant confidence. Destiny watched Amanda casually write a check for a weekend in Paris at the silent auction, knowing full well that it was her Destiny's $50 million infusion, keeping that checkbook from bouncing. The irony was suffocating. Jonathan, meanwhile, looked distracted and stressed, trying to network, unaware that his family's financial crisis had already been solved by the very woman his family despised. After the hospital director finished his speech, Amanda confidently walked to the stage and asked for the microphone. "This charity is very important to our family," she began, her voice smooth and practiced, carrying across the opulent room. Her eyes swept across the crowd before landing directly on Destiny. The room began to quiet as the attack became obvious. "Of course," Amanda continued, "not everyone understands the responsibilities that come with privilege. Some people see events like this as opportunities rather than obligations. Some people think that marrying into a family means you automatically understand the values that built that family. Amanda leaned into the microphone, her voice dripping with contempt. It's unfortunate when inappropriate additions to families try to insert themselves into worlds where they don't belong. The silence was deafening. Then a single sharp sound cut through the room, the scrape of Destiny's chair against the marble floor as she stood up. "Excuse me," Destiny said, her voice clear and strong, projecting across the stunned ballroom. "May I have that microphone?" Amanda's confident smile faltered. She looked at her mother, then back at Destiny, confused. She had expected Destiny to sit there and take this public humiliation just as she had accepted all the private ones. Destiny walked toward the stage, her legs steady, her voice strong. Amanda reluctantly handed her the microphone, her eyes filled with the first hint of fear Destiny had ever seen there. The room was completely quiet now. Hundreds of Chicago's most powerful people waited to see what the inappropriate addition had to say. "Thank you," Destiny said. "I want to tell you all a story. It's about a little girl who grew up in a housing project on the Southside of Chicago." She saw Jonathan in the audience, his face pale and concerned. She saw Victoria and Amanda, their expressions shifting from confusion to panic. "This little girl was smart," Destiny continued, "but she was told she didn't belong in advanced classes. She studied by candlelight when the power was cut off. She started her own business with $500 and a dream. And she built that consulting firm into one that works with Fortune 500 companies, one featured in Forbes." She paused, letting her words sink in. But that little girl learned something about family. She learned that family is about love and support. Destiny looked directly at Victoria and Amanda. "Unfortunately, some people think money makes them better than others. But here's what those people don't understand." Destiny's voice grew stronger. When that little girl discovered that the family she had married into was facing financial ruin, when she found out that generations of wealth had been mismanaged to the point of bankruptcy, she didn't walk away. The color drained from Victoria's face. Amanda's mouth fell open. Jonathan looked utterly confused. "She saw the numbers," Destiny said, her voice cutting through the silence. "The family business, 3 months away from complete financial collapse. The house in Lake Forest, mortgaged to the hilt. The family foundation, empty." A murmur went through the crowd. "When the family business was still facing collapse," Destiny said, "that little girl made a decision. She wrote a check. A personal check from her own account, $50 million. The gasp in the room was audible. Destiny looked directly at Amanda. She did it anonymously, through a shell corporation called Phoenix Holdings, because she didn't want recognition. She just wanted to save the family her husband loved. But standing here tonight, listening to speeches about inappropriate additions and knowing one's place, I think it's time for honesty. The problem, Amanda, isn't the inappropriate addition. The problem is a family so blinded by their own prejudice that they can't see the blessing that's been standing right in front of them." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Victoria stood, face pale, trying to regain control, but Jonathan was already walking past her, pushing through the crowd with purpose, his eyes locked on his wife. Jonathan reached the stage and took the microphone, but he didn't address the stunned crowd. He turned to his mother and sister. "My wife is right," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. All the times he had failed to protect her, all the weak excuses, all dissolved in this one public moment of absolute loyalty. "Destiny saved our family," he announced, his voice stronger. "She saved our business, our reputation, our future. And she did it quietly, without asking for recognition. Instead of celebrating her, we've treated her like she's not good enough for us." He turned to Destiny, taking her hands, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let them treat you like you didn't belong when you're the best thing that ever happened to this family." He looked back at his mother and sister. The days of subtle cruelty and public humiliation are over. The weeks that followed were transformative. Victoria and Amanda requested a private meeting. They came to Destiny's office, a neutral ground that was significantly her territory. They looked small and awkward on her modern sofa. "We owe you an apology," Victoria said, her voice softer than Destiny had ever heard it. "Our behavior has been inexcusable." Amanda nodded, looking at the floor. I was threatened by you, she admitted. You're everything I was raised to believe I was, but you actually earned it. You built something from nothing, and I inherited everything. I think part of me resented that. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. Destiny took a deep breath, letting their words settle. I don't need you to love me, she told them calmly. But I need you to respect me. I need you to treat me like I'm part of this family, because I am. Victoria nodded slowly. We'd like to try again, she said. We'd like to start over, if you're willing. Destiny agreed to try. It wouldn't be easy, but as she looked at her reflection in the glass of her office window, overlooking the city she had conquered, she finally recognized the woman her mother always knew she was. Not an inappropriate addition, but the strong, successful woman who belonged exactly where she chose to be. The silence in that grand ballroom wasn't just shock. It was the sound of deep-seated prejudice finally breaking. Destiny's story reminds us that true worth is never defined by a bank account, a last name, or the color of one's skin. Like a quiet light in a window, an act of kindness, even when undeserved, has the power to guide us through the darkest assumptions. When we set aside judgment, we open the door to true compassion. We hope this story of dignity and strength resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of stories that uplift and inspire, we warmly invite you to join the Black King community to hear more.